They put him in an ambulance, they take him to the hospital. Now this is in the early 70s, right? The doctors take a look at him, they say, Bob, there's a really good chance that you may never walk again. If you're going to, it's going to take a lot of really hard work. So he works and 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 he works. Year. He finally is able to get out of the hospital. He gets out of the hospital on crutches. Takes his crutches, walks out of the hospital, goes to his house, opens the door to his house and finds everything in his house gone. All his furniture, gone. All his awards, gone. All his money in his bank account, gone. He goes in the kitchen and finds a note from his wife. She said, Bob, I can't stand anymore to live with a guy who can't talk, and there's no way I'm going to live with a cripple. She left him. She took everything and she left him. Right? So Bob Love, now back in those days, the professional athletes didn't make the money that they do now. All of them would have jobs in the off season. So Bob Love, he didn't have anything. He didn't have any money. He didn't have anything. So he goes and he gets a job as a busboy at Nordstrom's. Right? Nordstrom's is a department store, and they had a restaurant in there. Imagine LeBron James, imagine Steph Curry being a busboy in a restaurant that you went to. Right? And he had to endure all kinds of stuff. Here's this big 6'9" guy, right, who's pushing a cart and wiping up spills in a restaurant. And people are calling, that Bob Love, man, he must be really stupid. But Bob Love, he didn't pay any attention to all that stuff. He just became the best busboy he could be. And he worked and he worked and he worked. And after a while doing it, word got out to the owners at Nordstrom's. And they said, Bob, man, we're hearing you're doing such a great job. How would you like us to pay for speech therapy? So they did. And he went and he learned how to overcome his stutter. Well, when he could overcome his stutter, and he could talk, and he told his story, people were fascinated. So Bob Love then went on a nationwide tour telling his story. And the story that he told was this. He said he grew up in a small town in the deep, deep South. I think it was in Mississippi. He was one of 17 children, and he was the youngest of all 17. And because the family was so poor, all 17 kids shared the same room. And because he was the youngest, he slept underneath the bed. He said every day when we would get up, the first person we would see was my grandmother. And my grandmother was the most influential person in my life. And she would say to us two things every morning. One, that we were to refuse to be the victim. No matter what situation we were in, we were never allowed to feel sorry for ourselves. Because feeling sorry for yourself never makes anything better. That's just a pity party you have for yourself. We were never allowed to play the role of the victim. Right? So no matter what the situation, we had to figure out a way that we were going to make it better. And the other thing that she would say to them was the saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. Right? That's what they had to say as they walked out of the room, all 17 kids. If it is to be, it's up to me. If something's going to happen, it's up to me to make it happen. I can't wait for somebody else. Right? So Bob Love and his brother and sisters, they want to learn how to play basketball. Well, they couldn't afford a basketball. So they would take their dad's old socks and they would tape them together. And they'd make a ball out of that. And they couldn't afford a basket or a rim, so they took old hangers and unwound them and strung them together and tacked them to a tree. And he got so good at basketball playing that way, he made his high school team. And then from his high school team, he made his college team, scholarship. From his college team, he got drafted by the Bulls. But the big difference between then and now, then there were only 8 teams in the NBA. It was way harder to make the team. Imagine the 32 teams now being forced down to 8. You'd cut 24 NBA players, 24 teams of NBA players. Right? So there'd be 500 guys maybe trying out for one spot. He made it. Right? He overcame all these different things, his broken back, because every time he was in that situation, he would say, if it is to be, it's up to me. I can't feel sorry for myself. I can't feel sorry that I broke my back. I have to work hard. If I'm going to get out of this hospital bed, it's up to me to make it happen. If it is to be, it's up to me. And that's how he lived his life. And that's why he was able to do what he did. So this is my son, Jonathan, who I told you about yesterday. Right? 6 years old. So 5 years old. However old you are when you're in kindergarten. So when Jonathan was in kindergarten, we lived out in Kennett. Right? And what would have to happen? He went to Greenwood Elementary School. Mrs. Ricky would drive him to Greenwood Elementary School in the morning. From Greenwood, he would get the bus, or from Kennett, excuse me. She would drive him to Kennett Y in the morning. From the Kennett Y in the morning, he would get the bus to Greenwood Elementary School. He'd go there for morning kindergarten. After morning kindergarten, he'd come back to the Kennett Y. the teachers at the Kennett Y would have a program for the kids from 12 until 3, let's say. Then from 3 till 5:30, the high school kids from Kennett would come over. He called them the babysitters. Right? Well, the first week Jonathan went to the Kennett Y, the first week of school that he had, every day at 5:30 when my wife picked him up, he was in tears. And that wasn't like him. He was so used to being around high school kids. It wasn't like him. So Sunday night, she's like, I don't know what we're going to do. He's crying every day. I said, well, listen, I'm going to take him in tomorrow morning. I'm going to call Garnet Valley. I'm going to come in late. I'll take Jonathan to the Kennett Y. So he and I get up the next morning. We get in the car. We had a big black Suburban. I'm in the front. He's in the back. And we go to what then was his favorite place in the world, Dunkin' Donuts. We sit down at Dunkin' Donuts. He's got his little Boston cream donut, chocolate all over his face. And I try to explain to him so that he understands it, the concept of refusing to be the victim. Because what he was saying was the babysitters, the high school kids, when they came over, they were mean to the little kids. So I said, but those high school kids, you have no control over what they do. Okay? You can choose the way you respond to what they do. You have all the choice. You don't have to get upset. You don't have to get mad. You don't have to cry. Right? You can respond any way you want to. So why don't we decide right now that that response is going to be a positive one? You can ignore them. You can move away from them. We went through all these different strategies that he could use. But I wanted him to understand, right, that he was not to feel sorry for himself. And the whole concept of if it is to be, it's up to me. So we finished our donuts. We got in the car. We have about a 2-mile drive to the Kennett Y. So I'm in the front looking in the rearview mirror. He's strapped in the back. And I look up. I say, hey, bud. I said, if it is to be, and he gets this big smile on his face, it's up to me, Dad. And I said, that's right. So we go a little bit further, and I said again. I said, if it is to be, it's up to me, Dad. And then a little bit further, if it is to be, and by the time we got into the Kennett Y parking lot, it was like a pep rally in the car. I'm banging the steering wheel, and I'm screaming, if it is to be, and he's yelling, it's up to me, Dad, it's up to me, right? He's a little 5-year-old in the car. So we get to the Kennett Y. And you know how usually you take the kids in, right? Parents take them in. He goes, Dad, you don't even need to take me in. I said, okay. So I wheel the car around. He unstraps in the back. He grabs his little lunchbox. He goes out the door. And the Kennett Y had those double doors that open automatically when you're coming. So I roll the window down and I yell out the window. I say, hey, bud, if it is to be, and as he's going through the doors, he said, it's up to me, Dad. And he goes in just like this, right? So he goes in. So I come to school. Right? I come and teach my day. After school, I have football practice. On Monday night in Delaware County, the coaches have a meeting every Monday night. So I went to the meeting. There was a guest speaker. I didn't get home until about 10 o'clock. Everybody was asleep. My wife's asleep. All the kids are asleep. The next morning, I have to be at school at 6 o'clock. So I leave at 5:30. Everybody's still asleep. I was meeting with a kid and his dad. About 9 o'clock, I get a call from Mrs. Ricky. Pick up the phone. Hello? What did you say to Jonathan yesterday? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, we were driving to Kennett Y this morning. He's in the back and I'm in the front. And he looks up and he says, hey, Mom, what kind of day are you going to have today, Mom? And I said to him, I don't know. Teresa and Natalie, they were still little girls. And Matthew, I don't know what kind of day. Jonathan said, Mom, you can decide right now. Right now you can decide what kind of day you're going to have. So I said to him, I said, you know what? I guess I'll have a good day. Why settle for good, Mom? Why not have a great day? If it is right now, you can decide, right? So she said, I'm going to have a great day. She goes, and then he made me do this chant thing, right? He would say if it is to be, and I had to yell back, it's up to me. So she tells me that, right? So Tuesday, I go through my day. I teach my classes. I go to practice. After practice on Tuesdays, I have a booster club meeting. I come home at 9 o'clock. Now, my house at this time was crazy. Right, we had a 6-year-old, we had twin 1-year-olds, we had a 3-year-old. There was no sleep in our house. My wife is trying to run her dental practice. I'm trying to teach and coach a football team. It was bedlam in my house. I walk home at 9 o'clock. My wife's got the biggest grin on her face. I said, everything all right? Great. She said it worked. What Jonathan said worked. I had a great day today. Right? So she's telling me that. Okay. Fast forward 1 year later. Now, I don't want you to think that we sit around our kitchen table and talk about this stuff. I don't say, pass the salt if it is to be. We don't do that, right? That's not how it works. 1 year later, we move out here to Garnet Valley. Jonathan's going into first grade. It's the night before the first day of school. He doesn't know a soul in the school, right? Have you ever been sleeping? So I'm in my bed sleeping. Have you ever been sleeping and then you can feel, somebody's there watching you? Right? You know what I'm talking. So I'm sleeping. I can feel, I open my eyes, and right in front of my face, with his backpack on, completely dressed, is Jonathan. I said, what are you doing? I'm ready for school, Dad. I look at the clock, it's 4:30 in the morning. 4:30. I said, but school doesn't start for 4.5 hours. You need to go back to bed. I can't, Dad, I'm too excited. I said, well, I'm going back to bed. Can I stay in here? I said, yeah. So he starts pacing next to my bed, back and forth. He's pacing, right? So now at 5 o'clock, he reaches up, Dad, can I call Jake? Well, his cousin Jake was getting ready to start preschool. I said, no, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, you can call Jake at 6:30. So he paces a hole in my rug until 6:30. At 6:30, he picks up the phone, he calls Jake. Jake, you ready for your first day of preschool, Jake? And whatever Jake says, I don't know, Jonathan said, Jake, there's no need to be nervous, Jake. We can decide right now what kind of day you're going to have, Jake. Right now we can decide. Right, it's a year later. And then he makes Jake do the if it is to be, and Jake's in the back, it's up to me, oh, come on. He's screaming in the phone. He got it. Right? 5 years old, he got it. And you can get it too. If it is to be, it's up to me. Every year for football, I get the seniors in my room. So in 2001, it was in this room. One of the seniors on our team was a guy named Ken Walrath, or Nick Walrath, or Glenn Walrath. Ken was the dad, Nick was the brother. Glenn Walrath. And we were trying to figure out a quote, and Glenn Walrath said, Mr. Ricky, why didn't we put on the back of our shirts, do what you're supposed to do? You say it 80,000 times a day at practice. And I said, yeah, we're getting 65,000 of them at you, right? Do what you're supposed to do. Watch this. This is a really cool thing. Oh, did you notice that? Like the shirt flipped over. That's one side of the shirt, that's the other. That's my technology, right? Do what you're supposed to do. It's such a simple statement, right? So look, this is our football team this year. Right? I can tell right now, the ball is just snapped. They haven't even taken a full first step yet. But I can tell that all three of these guys are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. I can tell by the eyes of the center where he's going. I can tell by where his foot is. I can tell by the eyes of our guard, his shoulder is dipped and where his foot is. The quarterback, his eyes are right on the read that he's going to make. If I can get all 11 guys to do what they're supposed to do on the football field, we're going to move the ball. Or if we're on defense, we're going to prevent the other team. So that's why he said it. Do what you're supposed to do. It works in football. What about in school? What about at school if you just do what you're supposed to do? What about that? What if when you come to school, you get homework, you do it? You have a test, you study for it. You need to sign up for lunch and learn, you do it. You need to be in class on time, you do it. You need to be quiet, you need to put your phone away. Just do what you're supposed to do. You eliminate 99% of the troubles that you have. Just by doing simply that. Same thing at home. Clean your room, do it. Empty the trash, do it. Unload the dishwasher, do it. Be home by 10, do it. Leave your sister alone. If you just do what you're supposed to do, you eliminate all those troubles. Same thing socially. This is the Garner Valley Senior Prom. That's my niece Gina right there in the middle. Right? Do what you're supposed to do in social situations. Supposed to be in by 11, be in by 11. Not supposed to get in the car with somebody who's under the influence, don't. Supposed to wear your seatbelt, wear it. Don't go over the speed limit, don't. Right? Don't be under the influence. Don't drink. Don't do what you're supposed to do. If you do what you're supposed to do, you eliminate all kinds of troubles. And it's not that difficult of a concept. This is John Nicrelli. John Nicrelli went to Garner Valley, and while he was at Garner Valley, he was not very good at doing what you're supposed to do. He was always in trouble at school. He was not a very good student. Right? But the thing I loved about John Nicrelli is he always took responsibility. When he screwed up, he never blamed anybody else. He always took full responsibility, and he screwed up a lot. So when he went to the Navy, right, he did that right out of high school. He went to the Navy, and after he was in the Navy for about 2 months, I got a letter from him. And in the letter he said, Mr. Ricky, the single best piece of advice I ever got in my life is do what you're supposed to do. When I got here, I knew the only way to survive was for me to do what I was supposed to do. So whatever it is that we're doing, if I'm making my bed in the morning, my 100% focus is on making that bed. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. When I get finished with that, if we're going to go do PT or something like that, and we're doing push-ups, my mind is 100% on that. Do what you're supposed to do. Because he did what he was supposed to do, John Nicrelli, who was a mess while he was here, was promoted in the Navy. Because that's exactly what they want you to do in the Navy. Do what you're supposed to do. And he realized, and in the letter he said, Mr. Ricky, if I would have just done this when I was in high school, my life would have been so much easier. Do what you're supposed to do. I felt so strongly about both of those things. Right here is a copy of my Garden Valley football letterhead. Right at the base of this copy is, do what you're supposed to do, and if it is to be, it's up to me. This pyramid that we have, a pyramid of principles. Do what you're supposed to do, if it is to be, it's up to me. That's how strongly we feel about those things. Anybody recognize that guy? So this guy is Tim Dunlap. Tim Dunlap graduated from Garden Valley in 2008. He was a middle linebacker on our football team that went to the state championship. Tim Dunlap, his dad used to be the principal at the middle school. He started coming to Garden Valley football camp when he was probably 5 or 6 years old. So he was at a lot of them, right? Tim Dunlap had the ability to get along with every kid. It didn't matter. There was no cliques, right? Tim Dunlap could get along with the smart kids, all the stereotypes, the nerdy kids, the band kids, of course, everybody. Tim Dunlap got along with everybody. Cafeteria workers, maintenance staff, teachers. He was a really likable kid. Well, Tim Dunlap graduated, went to Westchester University, and his girlfriend, Chantel, was a senior here at Garden Valley. Right? Word got out during Tim's freshman year that he was starting to use Percocet, a drug that he had been prescribed when he hurt his back playing football his senior year. Now, he knew that Chantel was not going to let him, she wasn't going to go out with him if he was using drugs. And we couldn't confirm it, but we started to hear all these rumors. Anyway, Chantel's senior prom in May, right? She comes to me in the middle of senior prom. We were down at the Chase Center in Wilmington. She said, Mr. Ricky, Tim is using Xanax and ecstasy in the bathroom. I just broke up with him. Call his parents, get him out of here. So I called Mr. and Mrs. Dunlap. They come and they take Tim, they take him home. 7 o'clock in the morning the next day, I get a knock on my door. It's Tim Dunlap. Like, Mr. Ricky, I really screwed up last night. I love Chantel so much, and she broke up with me. I know why she broke up with me. I don't know what to do. I said, Tim, you're wrong. You know exactly what to do. She broke up with you because you're using drugs, and you know she's not going to stand for that. You want Chantel back? Then you need to stop using drugs. He said, Mr. Ricky, I love her with all my heart. I said, saying it's not going to do anything. So Tim Dunlap decided, I'm going to get clean. So he went home, he put himself in a room, and the Dunlap family, his mom, his dad, his 2 brothers, his grandparents, cousins, uncles, and aunts, they spent 24 hours. Somebody was with Tim 24 hours a day. So he was never by himself. So he could, first of all, go through the withdrawal process from being hooked on the drugs. And he did. It took him a couple weeks. After he did that, he started to go get drug tested because he wanted to show Chantel that he was clean. All the rest of May, clean. Every week in June, clean. Every week in July, clean. Every week in August, clean. So Chantel takes him back, right? About the 3rd week in August. On the Sunday before Labor Day, the next week, coming out of St. Cornelius Church with my wife and kids, 10 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from Chantel. It's a really weird time for her to call. I answer the phone, and she's sobbing hysterically in the phone. I can't understand a single thing that she's saying. And then we lose connection. Almost immediately, Mrs. Dunlap calls. She said, Coach, Tim OD'd last night. We're on our way to Riddle Hospital. He was with another kid. Can you go please check the other kid and make sure he's okay, and then meet us at Riddle? I go to I drop the family off. I go to the other kid's house. I go right up to the other kid's okay. I go right up to Riddle. I walk into Riddle. I ask for Tim Dunlap. They send me over to a room. I walk into a room. There's Tim lying on his back on the table. His mom cradling his head. I'll never forget the scene. His dad with his hand stroking his arm. And Tim's eyes closed. Looks like he's asleep. Mrs. Dunlap says, Coach, we lost him. Passed away. I forget how many minutes ago. And Mr. Dunlap looked right up and he said, we just couldn't get him to do what he was supposed to do. We just couldn't get him to do what he was supposed to do. So Tim Dunlap, at 19 years old, passed away. And the next slide I'm going to show you, this is at our football banquet this year. This is Tim's dad. This is Tim's mom. This is Tim's brother, Pat. Obviously, that's me. And this is Jake Morin, who won the Tim Dunlap Man in the Glass Award. So what Mr. and Mrs. Dunlap did, in one of the most courageous acts I've ever seen, they wanted people to learn from Tim's mistake. So we sat down and we created an award that would recognize people who make good decisions, when other people around them aren't. It recognizes people who do what they're supposed to do. So here's something for you to remember. Sometimes kids will do something stupid, or they'll continuously be a pain at school, and they'll call me down and say, hey, could you talk to such and such a kid? And I'll talk to the kid, and sometimes the kid will say, you know what, Mr. Ricky, it's my life. If I want to screw it up, I can. And when I hear that, I get so mad, because that's the biggest, most selfish thing that you could ever say. It's such a cop-out. Here's what you need to know. Every decision that you make has a profound effect on the people who love you. When you screw around in school, you think it's no big deal. That has an impact on your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your people who love you. Every stinking time. And I sat at the Dunlap house for a whole week after that happened. And I watched his friends and the kids he went to school with and his teammates, right? And I watched his parents' friends and his brother's friends. I watched them all come through that house, all destroyed because of the decision that Tim Dunlap made. I watched the kids at school who didn't even go to school with him anymore. He was out, destroyed because of the decisions that he made. Don't tell me that the actions that you do only affect you. That's not true. And it's a selfish, immature way to think. I'm sure you'll know who these two people are. This girl, her name was Amy Grossberg. This guy's name is Brian Peterson. Grossberg and Peterson went to Ramapo High School in New Jersey. This was probably maybe around 2009, maybe 1999, maybe 20 years ago. They were high school sweethearts, really good school very similar to Garnet Valley, same kind of socioeconomic makeup, right? Really good students, never in trouble. Everybody loved Peterson and Grossberg. They went to the senior prom together. She was going to go to the University of Delaware. He was going to go to Gettysburg College. Right before they were ready to leave for college, she called Brian. Said, Brian, can you come over to my house? He comes over to the house. When he gets there, she says, Brian, I got to tell you, I'm pregnant. So here they are, 18 years old. They're just getting ready to go to college. And they panic. They get scared. They're afraid to tell their parents because they're afraid their parents won't let them go to college. So they just decide they're going to go to college and see what happens. A lot of times miscarriages occur. They're just going to take a chance and see. So he goes off to Gettysburg. She goes off to the University of Delaware. As time goes on, right, she starts to gain weight with the pregnancy. Nobody knows her down there. She just starts wearing baggier sweatpants, baggier sweatshirts. Right? You ever hear of the freshman 15 people gain when they go to college? It's not unnormal for people to gain weight. So she gains weight. Nobody really notices. After 9 months, she calls him and said, Brian, my water broke. You need to come down. So he drives from Gettysburg. It's about a 3-hour ride down to the University of Delaware. They get in the car. They head out on their way.